So today,
we're going to dive right in.
We're going to dive right in. We're really excited to be talking about sleep and water. And we're going to start off with a couple of quotes.
Yeah.
So the first one is from the NAP ministry, and it says, "Rest is a form of resistance because it disrupts and pushes back against capitalism." And we'll talk more about that, especially this time of year, which is a time really of deep rest, right? Where we're really needing this deep rest and deep sleep, but we're all kind of scurrying about. Maybe we're scurrying about a little bit less this year, but again, that idea that we'll talk more about the idea of rest and how that works in our culture.
And then this next passage is by Betsy Damon, founder of a group called Keepers of the Waters. And she writes, "Just as water is the foundation of life, it must also be the foundation of design of the built environment." And so our overarching theme here is that if we're not designing for water to be regenerative and for sleep to be this this honored and respected piece of our lives, that we're going to be suffering on all counts.
Right. And people seem to take, maybe water less for granted than sleep. But sleep is something where I've been talking about sleep with people for many years now, or several years now, and people really don't know enough about sleep to really make choices and to plan their days and to create environments that are really conducive to deep, restful sleep, which is something that we are all in need of. And actually, the World Health Organization has identified sleep, lack of sleep, as a major problem in industrialized countries around the world. And lack of sleep is responsible for so many health issues that people don't attribute it to, including fatal car accidents. 15% of fatal car accidents are caused by people who are fatigued, fatigued drivers. So, and we'll talk a lot more about that.
Yeah. But along those same lines, the management systems that we have for water, primarily in the last 100 years, but really for much longer than that, is all about getting rid of nuisance water. So draining it away, paving things, keeping it dry. And the long-term ramifications of this are really severe for our ecosystems and the planet at large, that we have been dehydrating our landscapes now for over 100 years, and we're suffering these consequences right now on this global scale. So
right, and to that end with sleep, and like we just mentioned about the pushback against capitalism, right, this idea of rest, because in our culture, in our society, lack of sleep is something that people kind of brag about sometimes, right? People are like, I don't need a lot of sleep, I
only got 2 hours,
and really it's one of the most underrated health routines or just rituals, routines that we can work into our life for the greatest benefit. So again, I like to say, from the permaculture principles of least change for greatest effect, just getting a few hours more sleep per night and knowing how to bring yourself into the state of sleep is, there's not a lot of changes that need to be made, and it will have a profound effect on your overall health and wellness. And so why do we sleep? And why do we need water? So one of the things we do with the work that we do is we look at the cycles in nature and human nature's and the cycles in humans. And so when we were coming up and talking about sleep and talking with each other about water, we're like, oh, it's just like the cycles or the stages of sleep, and the cycles and the stages of water have so much to do with each other and really mirror a lot of the same patterns. So,
and we saw this great similarity between the sleep deprived human and the dehydrated landscape, this lack of functionality, and the way that all systems end up kind of spiraling down when the landscape is dehydrated and when the human is sleep deprived. It all kind of caves in on itself, and you have a lot of dysfunction that is not necessary. Like these are problems that can be remediated quite simply, really.
Right, and so why do we even sleep, right? So we're going to go quickly into some parallels, and then I'm going to take you into a journey through the stages of sleep and what happens, and just sort of bring you into that place. So what are if you know some of the reasons we sleep, you can go ahead and put them in the chat, but we'll just wrap. And why do we need water? How is it similar? So one of the major reasons we need to sleep is memory consolidation, right? Pulling an all-nighter is really not a good thing because you're actually less likely to remember everything you just crammed into your brain over a period of time than if you actually literally slept on the book itself, right? There, people joke about that, but it's actually not very helpful to pull an all-nighter. So memory consolidation, cell regeneration, synapse formation, and how does this relate to water, Lydia?
Well, water cycles on the planet are really responsible for the stability of our climate, for moving heat around the planet, for maintaining vegetation, which is that other critical piece of the climate stability, for maintaining the soil microbiome with all the fungi connecting all of the roots together and transferring nutrients to each other, and for recharging the aquifers. So we have this water we can draw from for human uses, and so that we have something to source our streams, our lakes, our artesian springs, and of course, this pumping of the water from the earth into the atmosphere using the plants, via the plants.
Exactly. So beautiful.
You want to hear more?
So let's go. So we're going to take a look at sleep and sleep cycles and stages and some factors that affect sleep. And then we're going to look at the water cycle. And then we're going to, and as we're going, we want you all to also be thinking, as we're talking about sleep and as we're talking about the water cycles, what similarities do you see? How do you see your sleep patterns mirrored in your water catchment patterns or not, right? So let's just have fun and explore that.
Yeah.
So, so one of the things about sleep that I find is that most things that people do to get a good night's sleep, and if this is not you, awesome, right? But there's a lot of things that we do that are really not beneficial to ourselves falling asleep, which I'll talk about in a moment. But let's just take a little journey through the night. I've tried to find some really beautiful graphics, and there just really aren't a lot of really beautiful graphics, but so just, so a lot of you have your screens off, which is fine. And so just let's just be thinking. So it's evening, it's nighttime, you're getting ready for bed, and we'll talk about what it looks like leading up to that. But so you're just laying down in bed and you're fully ready to receive sleep, okay? So the very first stage you go in is just called stage 1. And this is when your body temperature, this is just like light sleep. We've talked about ecotones in our last 2 talks. And so this stage 1 is like your ecotone between being awake and being asleep. It's just very light.
Describe an ecotone.
And the ecotone is the area where 2 specific ecosystems or communities overlap. So the stage 1 is it's the place in between where here's your awake self, here's your asleep self, and this right there in 1. And if you can really get yourself into this 1, and I like to kind of hang out there. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm really sleepy and I love that feeling where I'm still kind of thinking and I'm still sort of awake, but I know I'm about to fall and I can sort of feel that feeling of about to go in there. So here we are in stage 1, and now we're ready to go into stage 2. So stage 2, this is when our body temperature starts to fall. This is when our heart rate starts to fall and our body starts to calm down. So again, as we're thinking about what we need to be in stage 2, think about what your temperature in your bedroom is usually like, or where you normally sleep. Think about what else is going on in that environment, and we'll talk about it more in a moment. So this, in stage 2, you fall into around 20 minutes after you start to fall asleep. And so this is also the most optimal stage in which to nap, because you're sleeping and your body temperature has fallen and your heart rate has fallen. So your body's starting to really relax into sleep, but you can wake up and feel refreshed. So there is some controversy around napping. I myself am a nap enthusiast. And you really don't want to nap for longer than about 20 minutes, maybe 30. Okay. And the reason is because you just want to feel refreshed. So as long as you can stay in the stage 2, right, you're great. That's why also when you wake up, you're a little bit cold, right? If you've taken a nap, you're like, oh, because your body temperature dropped, right? So it's good to then, put on a sweater just for a moment to get yourself back awake. So about a little bit after stage 2, you enter stage 3. So there's 5 stages. 3 and 4 are basically lumped together. And I've seen many people just got rid of the 5 altogether and they just say 1 through 4, but it's really 3 and 4 kind of get put together. And this is what's known as slow wave sleep. So our brain waves slow way down. So the brain waves are slowing down. So our mind is resting, but our body is still actually able to move. So this is where, if you're tossing and turning in your sleep, you're in a stage 3 or a stage 4. Right? Your body still is able to respond to signals from your brain. This is where you're sleepwalking. People always ask me about night terrors. This is where night terrors and that comes in, is in your stages 3 and 4. So our bodies are still able to be active, but our brains are resting. And we spend fewer, so percentage of sleep-wise, we're only spending about 20% or even less, about 17% of our night's sleep in stages 3 and 4. We'll talk about that in another moment. I'm in a moment. Stage 5 is the next stage, and stage 5 is what people seem to know the most about, and that is REM sleep, so rapid eye movement sleep. And this is the part of our sleep cycle that is our deepest sleep. However, so this is where we dream. Some dreams can happen in stage 2, they're finding, but this is where the memory consolidation is happening. This is when problem solving is happening. This is when we're dreaming. And so what happens then, so now what happens is, unlike stages 3 and 4, where we're having slow brainwave sleep, when we're in REM sleep, our brain waves, our brain activity is incredibly similar to when we are awake, right? Because again, what are we doing? We are actually problem solving and consolidating memories. We are actually, our brain is working to move us through what happened during our day, during our waking time. And the other piece with REM sleep is, our rapid eye movement sleep, stage 5 sleep, is we don't, so with all of them, they're stage 1 through stage 5. Well, we don't just go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. We go to 1 to 2 to 3, back to 2, maybe to 4, right? Then back to 2. We spend most of our time actually in 2 because we're resting, right? We only spend, and then as we go through our stages, which takes about 90 to 110 minutes per going through all 5, and then we loop back. And we really need to get about 4 to 5 of those full cycles every single night. Because as we are sleeping, our REM, the REM part of our sleep, which is the most, what we benefit from really the most, becomes longer and longer. So I'm going to try to screen share this. I believe I have it queued up. It's not, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I can know where to find it. Nope, there we go. So if you look at this graph here, this is the EEG. This is what's measuring our brain waves. And this is the time of hours of sleep. So if you notice here, the amount of REM sleep that we're getting through each cycle is getting greater. It's becoming greater throughout our night's sleep. So if we only get 5 hours of sleep, we're only getting a tiny little bit of REM, right? We're getting the majority of our REM sleep at the end of the evening after we've hit around 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Really important to remember. And we'll send this graph and this article, which is pretty good, in the resources. So let's go back. So let's see. What else did I want to say? Oh, so the other thing, so like with stage 3 and 5, your brain is resting, but your body is still active. When you're in REM sleep, your brain is super active, but you're in a state of what some people call, well, it's a paradoxical state, because even though it's you're asleep deeply, your brain is as active as when you are awake. And this is when your dreams happen. And one of the things I love to say about dreams is that our brains create every single piece of our dreams. It's quite fascinating if you think about it, right? It's every single piece. So, and when we're dreaming, there's a part of our brain that is related to rational thought, what you can and you cannot do. And guess what? That part of our brain, kind of shuts off. Not completely, but this is why we are able to fly and swim underwater. Like I have recurring breathe underwater. And you know, have you ever had that feeling where suddenly you remember in your dream, oh, I forgot I could fly. I forgot I could breathe underwater, right? And you go on this fabulous adventure, right? Because this part of our brain, it allows us to not think rationally or critically, because then we can problem solve. It allows us to see situations and things we've experienced in our waking time, and it allows us to look at it differently.
Yeah.
And without this thing that says, you can't do that, and that won't work, the things that stop us throughout the day, that part of our brain's not awake when we're sleeping. So it's magical, and we really want to use that part, that dreaming and that problem-solving part of the dreams. So let's see. So I want to go into the 2 factors. I'm just going to mention these briefly, but there's 2 factors that affect our ability to sleep. And I just have a couple minutes to say this. And so one is called, maybe Lydia, you could type it into the, one is our suprachiasmatic nuclei. And these are 2 nuclei that are, I like to go like this. They are at the space where our optical nerves go into our brains, they cross. And right where that cross is, we'll put my mouth here, that's where the suprachiasmatic nuclei is. And it's reading and it's feeling information that's coming visually into your brain, okay? So that's what's helping us. So then it's saying, oh, it's getting dark outside. So your suprachiasmatic nuclei sees that, sees it, senses it, and it communicates with your body using another chemical substance that we all know the name of, which is melatonin. So the melatonin does not make us sleepy. This is really key. Melatonin, right, is triggered with the suprachiasmatic nuclei, used to communicate with our bodies and let us know that it's time to be ready to go to sleep. So if sleep were the race, right? Sleep were the race, on your mark, get set, go. You have the little gun. I don't like the gun metaphor, but here we have it. It's a race. It's not a bullet in it. The melatonin is the gun that says go, right? So if you're using melatonin, make sure that there's no regulations on melatonin. Make sure you have a really good source of it. And you want to take it 2 hours before you want to go to sleep. You don't want to take it throughout the day. So that's just a little, throw that in there. So your suprachiasmatic nuclei is helping to trigger your ability to sleep. And we're going to talk about why that's so important when we talk about technology in a bit. And the other one is called sleep pressure. So sleep pressure is caused by the buildup of adenosine. And Lydia's writing these in the chat. And the adenosine builds up all day long, all day while we're awake. The adenosine is rising and rising and rising, and it's causing us to feel really, really sleepy.
I get a lot of this.
Yeah, a lot of that.
I'm a good sleeper.
And so the adenosine and the sleep pressure, it just helps us feel sleepy. And then when we finally sleep, we work through the adenosine, and we wake up the next day and with no adenosine or very, very little, unless we didn't get any sleep. And then the sleep pressure stays, right? Or if you don't get a restful night's sleep, you didn't work through that adenosine, you wake up tired, right? So again, it's not about how much necessarily you sleep, but the quality and the quantity. So the quality of our sleep is incredibly important, just like the quality of our water. So I'm going to end on that. And we're going to come back to all of these factors in a moment.
All right, so I'm going to dive into a little overview of the water cycle, or the hydrologic cycle, which is familiar to most people from, middle school science classes and, generally being a human being on this planet. But the way that we've been managing the water cycle over the last 100 years has really altered it. And it's not really an intact water cycle anymore. It's more of a half water cycle. And so you can see on this graphic right here, this is a little bit of a explanation of a healthy, intact landscape. So the healthy land territory. So we have rain falling and soaking in and moving down deep through first the topsoil and then into the subsoil and then making its way into the aquifers, so that this blue line under the brown here is meant to represent an aquifer. And there's so many different kinds of aquifers, but it's just a zone of saturated soil that then is able to feed and support the vegetation whose roots grow down into it. And that allows vegetation, in particular trees and large groups of trees, to draw that water up through their bodies and then release that as water vapor. And that water vapor is what helps the planet move its it's heat around. So instead of being sensible heat that makes you feel hot from the solar radiation where you're standing on the ground, that heat is converted via photosynthesis into this drawing of water and releasing of water from the plant. And that water vapor required heat to go from liquid to vapor. It rises up into the atmosphere where it then condenses back into rain and falls, and that condensation is releasing the heat. So this plants taking water out of the earth and releasing it in the atmosphere is actually moving heat from the surface and releasing it. So this is part of the stability of our climate. This underground water and the saturated soil, do you want to say something else?
I will. I'm just
okay. Is also what feeds our creeks and streams and lakes. So those are just open bodies interacting with that groundwater table and allowing that liquid surface water to move freely over the landscape. And just to say too that streams and lakes and ponds and whatever they are, we sometimes think of them as our water sources, but they are not our sources. They are our storages. Our water source is the precipitation. So rain and snow and even fog are our sources, and the storage is in the soil and in the lakes and the rivers. So when we have this hydrated landscape, water in the soil, water in the aquifers, that allows the plants to draw it up, that allows the creeks and the rivers and the ponds to flow and be full, and that facilitates the stability of our climate and the evening out of heat across the surface of the planet. And then just to say that the piece that we've interfered with is our landscape's capacity to have the water move from precipitation into those deeper storages. And we'll talk more about that later. But this graphic here is the intact water cycle.
Yeah, and so we wanted to just, so some of the similarities that we see. So we want to take this sleep cycles and just look at this intact water cycle here and draw some analogies. So when we're talking about sleep stage 1 and 2, right, this is like a nice drizzle.
Yeah, heavy
right?
fog.
Heavy fog, right? So it's definitely there. It's definitely precipitation, or there's water involved, but it's not really deep. But it's very necessary. It's still necessary to get us to where we need to go, right? If it's sunny all the time and hot all the time from the heat of urban areas, for example, that all gets pushed away and the water doesn't actually fall, right? So temperature is actually very, very key.
Yeah.
So stages 1 and 2, again, it's like the fog, the light rain, a drizzle, and maybe not over an extended period of time.
Right. Like napping, you know, it's just wetting the surface or perhaps the top couple of inches, just the mulch or just the topsoil. And, you know, just to point out kind of the nap light rain parallel is that, you know, if you're only napping, you're not getting that deep recharge. And if you're only getting light rain, that encourages really shallow root growth in plants, which is then really vulnerable to then heat and wind and exposure later. Then those roots just dry right up because that water is not going deep enough to really sustain and nourish the landscape and the plants.
Exactly. So that's that comparison. And so then with the stages 3 and 4 are really the slow brainwave sleep, the really deep sleep. Like it's really hard to wake up from. Your brain is fully resting, even though your body can still move. So this is more like a long, steady rain, right? Yeah. So again, it's really allowing, there's effective infiltration happening, right? You're able to actually the water is actually taken in by the soil, by the earth, right? Yeah. Just like you are being able to fully take in the positive effects of sleep.
Yes, and this can recharge those shallow aquifers, like the ground table, you know, bodies of water that we could dig a hole and access, you know, not like the Ogallala aquifer that we've been pumping out of for farming for years, but, you know, more like something that you can affect yourself on your landscape and that recharges through a few days of steady rain or a good, you know, a good healthy winter of average precipitation.
Right, and this is when a lot of cell regeneration happens in our sleep, right? Cell regeneration, synapse formation, because we're able to do that in that stage of sleep. And so again, like Lydia was saying, super applicable to water and those long, steady rains that really, really penetrate deeply.
Yeah.
And then Rem sleep.
Well, hang on. Oh. This can just sustain those deep-rooted perennial plants too, this kind of shallow aquifer recharge. And this can also fuel our lakes and our streams. It's the replenishment of those flowing surface waters.
Right. And so now looking at Rem sleep comparatively with the intact water cycle. So this is a totally hydrated landscape. So this is kind of what we're looking at here. Like there's just a lot going on. The memory consolidation that's happening is that the roots know that the ground holds water. The plant roots know that the ground has water. They have memory. They know, oh, this is here. This is where I can access this. Right? Just like when you're going to sleep, your body says, oh, good. Now I'm going to be able to solve these problems. I'm going to be able to look at this differently. I'm going to be able to come up with solutions I never would have dreamed of before. Right? So, and this is the totally hydrated landscape, the deep, deep aquifer replenishment, just like the deep, deep aquifer of our minds and our lives through our deep REM sleep.
Yes. And this really cool parallel that we thought of here was, when you have that deep aquifer recharge because you've had rain over a long period of time and it's infiltrating down, as it moves deep through the landscape, it begins to be under pressure from the weight of all the other water on top of it, and that forces it to kind of move laterally and look for a way out. And when it finds cracks in that rock and then, comes up under pressure, this is when we have those beautiful, super high quality artesian springs where the water is cold and totally clean. It's been filtered through its passage through all these different layers of soil. And this is like that dream problem-solving stage where it's back up on the surface now, right? It could be mistaken for surface water, like the brain activity of REM sleep could be, is so similar to the awake state, but it's really much more it's really much more deeply regenerative and healthy and purified and powerful.
Yeah, exactly. So we love all of this.
Yeah.
We're gonna, we'll stop the share.
Yeah, we can stop the share. And just to say, like, these parallels and these things that that we're integrating for you here, these were born out of hours of conversation where we just kept seeing these parallels and how these effects were really so similar. And we love to draw the parallels between the human ecosystem and the landscape ecosystem as a way of understanding ourselves better.
Yeah.
So it's been a beautiful exploration for us.
Yeah. And so now we want to talk about, now we've sort of given an overview of sleep, an overview of the water cycle, some comparisons around different types of precipitation and sleep. But so why don't we all get a good night's sleep? And why don't we all have tons of water?
Right. Why do we have a dehydrated planet?
Why is this happening? Right. So there are some things that we just do that prevent us from being able to actually either fall asleep, stay asleep, benefit from sleep. And there are things that we do that cause us to shunt water away and take it off of our landscape because of some preconceived ideas that we have about what water looks like. If there's too much, then it's flooding and mosquitoes, and we hear this all the time. Well, what about mosquitoes if I'm catching water? Right? So,
and then all these things we've done inadvertently that prevent our surfaces from being able to drink in, even if we're not actively shunting it away, we've interfered with the capacity of the planet to infiltrate.
Yeah. So we're going to just talk about technology a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So technology is can be lovely. Here we all are today on Zoom, right? Now, who knew we'd appreciate Zoom this much, right? Maybe we're a little tired of it, but hey, we all get to gather today because of this, right? So it can be great. But technology and sleep, they don't mix, right? It's really, we have done so much that prevents, we do things every day. And, a lot of our students or participants, and definitely I teach at our local community college, and my students are always like, oh no, I'm just doing it all wrong. I don't want anyone to feel like they're doing it all wrong. Yet the invitation is, what's the least change for the greatest effect that you can make in your life around sleep that will help you? And we're going to talk about these 4 in a moment: receive, retain, recharge, and release through your sleep. So technology. So the suprachiasmatic nuclei that I mentioned, right? It's right in the middle of our brain where our optic nerves cross. So the suprachiasmatic nuclei, what are they? What is it most? It's actually 2, so I will say they. Most sensitive to is blue light, right? Blue light. So if we were all together in class, I might ask people like, okay, so how many of y'all go to sleep at night watching YouTube or Netflix or binge watching something? I don't do that actually, but I will tell you that about 80%, 80% of the class will raise their hand. My mom, who I adore, she tells me I can't go to sleep unless I have Netflix on my iPad. That's her sleep ritual, right? But then she's tired all the time. So we're going to talk about that. So what happens is the suprachiasmatic nuclei, it takes hours for it to become deactivated around that blue light. It is so sensitive. So the recommendation is we need to turn off our devices, even our phones, even if you have those yellow glasses, because my students all say that I have the yellow glasses, so I'm not affected. And I will tell you that the only studies that I have seen that say those yellow glasses work are made by the companies that make the yellow glasses. Right? The other research says, it doesn't seem to work. We don't know. It's inconclusive. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Like, it's just better because if you notice, because when I do fall asleep to something, I dream about that. So do you actually want all of these shows to be affecting your dream time when your dream time could be being used to fly or swim underwater or solve a long time problem, right? We want our own senses to inspire our dreams, our own problems, really not the problems of some sitcom or some show or something we're binge watching at the moment, right? So again, we want to bring that down. The other thing people like to do, and I'm so sorry if any of you do this, is wear polyester to bed, which is not breathable, and to heat up our rooms and to have lots of down blankets. So here's the deal. In order to fall asleep, this is around stage 2, our body temperature needs to fall by about 2 degrees. And if our room is so hot and we're wearing non-breathable fabrics like polyester, and our windows are closed and the heat is on, the temperature can't fall. It will take us a lot longer to fall asleep because our body's just like, I'm hot. Right? Babies sometimes, and I'm not telling you to make your baby cold, but babies often can't, they're like, it's too much. They can't, their temperature's not dropping. So cotton fabric is really good. Having a window slightly open, some fresh air, making sure that the temperature in your room is actually a little cooler than you would like, and that what's making you warm isn't your like polyester rabbit thing with feet. It's actually the blankets on your bed that then you can take off.
Natural fiber.
Right, natural fibers, lower degree heat, less lighting. And if you start to lower the lighting in your house hours before you're ready to fall asleep, it really helps your suprachiasmatic nuclei communicate with the melatonin to help you get to this place. So that's one thing. The other thing I hate to say is this whole thing about bragging about not needing a lot of sleep. Right? Because what do we do? Matthew Walker, who has a great book that we will put in our resources, I'm just going to say, he says that caffeine is one of the heaviest, what is it called? Psychostimulating drugs that is not monitored. So so many of us are taking in caffeine and the Red Bulls and all of that. Check this out. Caffeine and adenosine, remember adenosine is a sleep pressure, they're really similar molecules. And caffeine will block our receptor cells from the adenosine and make us not feel sleepy. Only problem is the adenosine levels will keep rising, even though we've had all this caffeine. And the half-life for caffeine is many, many hours. So if you're drinking your coffee late in the day, that caffeine is still blocking the receptors from the adenosine and your ability to actually feel tired. But then what will happen is, that's why people get the crash. You ever had that? So you eat a bunch of chocolate or you have a bunch of caffeine or an energy drink and then you just like, whoa. Because when it does kick out the caffeine, suddenly you have this really high sleep pressure that you've just been sort of putting at bay all day long. So this thing that all of us do, right? Our workplaces, we don't have the workplaces so much anymore, but there's always a coffee going, always a tea brewing, and we're just feeding ourselves with something that's actually helping us to not be able to fall asleep and have a restful night's sleep. So I think I'm gonna, the noise in your sleep environment. So the other thing is noise, and I sort of addressed that with the TV, or not the TV anymore, but just devices. You really want it to be quiet. Right? We really want to really get into that deep, deep sleep. And especially if there's any moms out there, and again, nothing around, not to put off the dads, but they've actually proven that moms, especially new moms, they stay in the light form of sleep. We stay in stage 2 much more because we're always listening. We're listening and listening. The dads, evolution hasn't done that for them. That's fine. That's not their problem. That's not their fault. But moms have developed this need to stay in this lighter sleep when they have the new babies because we're listening for them. So really important to make sure that you're feeling that whatever you need to do to feel confident to get a good night's sleep when you're a new mom, to please do it. And napping is a really good way to do that. Did you want to?
I just wanted drugs and alcohol.
Oh, drugs and alcohol. Okay, well, this is also really unpopular. So basically, I'm going to just quote Matthew Walker again. He has this great quote where, so basically alcohol and drugs, he talks about marijuana, they are sedatives. And what we do in the United States is that we mistake or confuse sedation with sleep. So being sedated is not the same as being sleepy or actually sleeping. So he will actually say, and this could go good for the Corona times. I saw him in an interview, and so someone said, okay, wait. So he said, you definitely shouldn't be drinking alcohol. All these nightcaps that people have will prevent us from falling in, the sedation prevents us from falling into REM sleep. So we will have less time in REM sleep. But everybody this is part of our culture. So the one interviewer asked him, so are you actually promoting day drinking? And Matthew Walker said, well, no, I would never on an international talk show recommend that people start drinking early in the day. But yeah, since you mention it, it's better for your sleep cycles. So I'm not promoting that either, but I do find it interesting that, again, it's part of our society that we've grown into, that we drink coffee all day and then we're all amped up and then we eat really late and then then we have alcohol at night and then we're trying to get a good night's sleep. So everything we're doing in our current world, and then we heat it, and there's polyester, and there's electric blankets, and there are things that keep us from self-regulating our own temperature, our own heart rates, and our own ability to fall into that deep, deep, very needed sleep.
Yeah. And so along those same lines, there's so many technologies that are now preventing our water cycle from operating optimally. And Carmen just threw some stuff in the chat. And thank you, Carmen, for your bright, engaged face. It's so lovely to have you here on the call.
You've been on before with us.
Yeah. So, with the planet and the water, we have been paving things over, our roads and our parking lots and even the buildings themselves. And then even when we are not actually sealing the surface intentionally with another material, when we are devegetating and then exposing the soil to the sun, to the wind, over time, that is killing the life in the soil. So the roots die, the bacteria, the fungi, all of those little creatures in there, they want an ecosystem that is full of plants and shaded and being constantly provided with more organic matter in the form of mulch. When we devegetate, we take all of that away. And in a very short period of time, we have dead soil. And dead soil doesn't have any spaces in it for that water to move down through. And then there's how we've dammed all of our rivers to provide for water source reservoirs and for hydroelectric dams and all of that stuff. And so we're preventing the water from moving in its natural way. And we've channelized the rivers in order to make them more navigable and to keep them from causing damage when they flood. And all of these things, these normal processes, were how the planet got water into itself. And humans have been trying to make everything more convenient for ourselves by changing all of that. And the end result is that the water is not soaking into the planet. The planet is becoming drier and drier. And then the general degradation of our ecosystems, various animals that we've made go extinct and, huge swaths of forests that we have removed for agriculture or whatnot, have dramatically changed the way the planet is able to receive. And so, it wasn't so noticeable back in the late 1800s, but by the time we got to the mid 1900s, people have been starting to notice, and we're blaming it all on climate change, but it's actually the way we're managing the water cycle that is a major contributor to this climate change. So people have conveniently reversed the cause and the effect in order for it not to be our responsibility, in order for us not to have to make changes to the way we manage our landscapes. But it's actually very clear when you look at the research through this lens and you really think about a functioning planet versus the planet that we have right now.
Right. And just to bring that back again to the sleep, that it's the same. So how we've constructed our lives and our societies are detracting from our ability to retain, to really benefit from sleep or even get to sleep at all and actually retain water.
And so now, instead of being fully functional humans with a full access to our creativity and our brilliance and our our reservoir of strength and vitality, we're sort of these degraded beings, and it's the same for the planet at large.
So we wanted to talk about 4 concepts. So we could put it up on the whiteboard and type it in.
Oh, okay.
Let's just do that. That'll be fun. We've never done that before.
Hand.
So the reason we don't have a lot of, where's the whiteboard? It's not coming up. That's an option. Huh. Okay, never mind. So there's 4, they're easy concepts. And we got these from Brock Dolman, right? So yes. Brock Dolman, and we will send you, it's a really cool, it's actually about beavers, and we're hoping to have a little bit of time to talk about beavers. Mm-hmm. What do beavers have to do with sleep? Well, hopefully we'll get there. So he talks about 4 concepts that I mentioned earlier.
And he calls them the 4 R's of conservation hydrology, but we've broadened them out.
Yeah, we like to broaden things. Yes. We like to stretch them like a silly putty. We say, okay, good, we'll take that and we'll raise you.
Yes.
We'll expand that by 10.
We'll make it a metaphor for so much more.
So it's the 4 R's, and we're gonna talk about it. Lydia's gonna type them in the chat, and it's receive, retain, recharge, and release. So already we're hoping that you're like, oh yeah,
those are good words.
We get this, right? So we're just going to do a little back and forth here and talk about these 4 R's in relationship to sleep and water. And these are our solutions, and these are our invitations for you all in your lives to get a better night's sleep, right? And to be able to receive, retain, recharge, release through sleep, and receive, retain, recharge, release water in your landscape, right? Isn't that so cool? So, receiving sleep, we started to talk about this. Like, what does that even mean? Well, part of it is the ability to receive the adenosine, right? To be able to actually feel the sleep pressure, because so much of, again, what I said, we try to do is to not feel the sleep pressure. And then we try to work as much as we can into our day. And then right before we go to sleep, we're like up until the moment we try to lay down, people are eating, they're working out, they're having coffee, they're
writing reports,
they're writing reports, they're drinking alcohol, right? All the things.
Watching webinars.
So even if so the invitation would be, so maybe this isn't you, but if that is you, what can you just do right away? And maybe you just do it twice a week to start, right? You just try. So to receive sleep, you lower the temperature in your room, right? This is why baths and showers before sleep, some people say it's a cheat, but what it actually is it's, well, first of all, it's really getting the blood flow really nicely throughout your body, but it raises your body temperature. So then when you go to sleep, your body's like, whoa, because the temperature can drop more easily. Now, if you take a bath and then you put, again, on sort of fabrics that aren't conducive to your body breathing, and you close your windows, right? So the best thing to do to receive the sleep is to have, if you're gonna have caffeine, have it way, way, way earlier in the day. Honor that feeling of wanting to sleep. And the lights start to lower your lights, right? So you really want to have less overhead light. And maybe the little fairy lights will work for you. Maybe you have a little night lamp. Maybe you have some candles, even if they're electric candles that you're starting to do. So to receive the sleep, you're wanting to be able to lower your heart rate. You're wanting to lower your body temperature. You're wanting to have a quiet, comfortable place to sleep that you can self-moderate the warmth throughout the night. That will help you to receive the sensation of sleep.
Yeah.
And so with water,
I mean, hydrologically, the receiving is just the precipitation event that we're experiencing. So the rain or the snow or the fog, and those events are moderated by this overall climate moderation, which is affected by the groundwater and the plants. So I won't go into all those details now, but our rain events are part of our management of the landscape. So we want to receive more rain events of a type that we can retain.
Exactly. So we'll go into retain. So what does it mean to retain sleep? Well, it really just means to be able to stay asleep, right? To really retain that, be able to retain that space and to not be woken up, right? To really get through at least 4 to 5 cycles per night. So that's 8 hours. We're really wanting 8 hours. People who, the average American gets only 6.5. So I'm asking y'all, I'm only asking y'all, if you're that one, to sleep in an extra hour and a half every night is going to work wonders. It's going to bring you, think of an hour and a half as a whole other sleep cycle, 1 through 5, and a longer REM at the end of your night. So really, really important. So to retain the effects of sleep is to really allow yourself to stay asleep. And again, I'm gonna speak about alarms. So I use alarms, and I actually don't do this so much anymore, but my daughters would call the alarm clock the snoozer, because we would just, wake up like an hour before we'd actually get out and snooze and snooze. Well, check this out. The snoozer alarm and those alarms, they actually cause a little cardiac event. They're actually, it's true. They're not good for you, and you don't really get a good amount of sleep afterwards. So again, all the sleep research says, just set your alarm where you're gonna wake up, right? Really practice that. And I've been trying to practice that. So now I wake up right before my first alarm. I just have 2 alarms now. I wake up before my first alarm, I turn it off, and then I wait for my second alarm, which is really like, if I don't get up by now, it's gonna be way too late. But that works for me, and I'm getting about an hour or more sleep per night, which is great. So that's the retaining.
So retaining on the landscape is really about maintaining that permeability of your soil surface so that the water can soak in. So the rain is falling onto the ground, but if it's just on asphalt or concrete and it's going right into a drain and then leaving, it's as if it didn't rain at all. So to retain it, we need to cultivate soil that can receive, that has those open pore spaces, that has that spongy texture. And we do that through vegetation and mulch and getting organic matter in there.
Swales and berms.
And contouring the earth, or this, earthworks that can be small, something you dig with a shovel that just gives the water a place to sit long enough to soak in. So especially in the beginning of restoring your soil surface, in order to make it more receptive, you need to really give it a basin type shape so that the water can't just run away, but has that time to soak in. As we are, move further along in the restoration and the earth is more spongy and more receiving, it can take that water faster, and the contouring isn't as essential. But on a damaged landscape, the contouring is completely essential to jumpstarting this restoration process. So to retain, we have to have the time with the water on the earth and the earth's capacity to drink it in. The soil should be like a sponge.
Yeah, and we love this idea. So go out and maybe, again, just look at your house and look at the drainage, look at your rain gutters, right? So a lot of our clients here, we go and all their rain gutters, they have rain gutters for their whole roof, right? So they're probably catching hundreds of thousands of gallons of water per year. But then you go and you follow them and they go underground and they don't even know where they go to.
They come out in the street, or they just end up
Some of them don't even, they just end up in some underground shunting to the ocean.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stay on the landscape.
Or you've seen those ones that just dump down into the driveway, just on the surface, and then just running down the driveway, or running across the lawn, or the lava rock over plastic kind of situation.
Right. And so we really like people to think about, and so if you're thinking about sleep, it's just creating the right environment where you're cool, yet warm enough, not enough noise, not any noise, not too much light. Same with your house, or your home or your apartment or wherever you are, to use those downspouts to create like a moat of moisture, right? The big wet circle around your home, and because of all the fires, this is a real consideration. We need to keep the water in our soil, not only because it's just better for the earth, but it is a preventative measure, right? It is a preventative measure, and it's retaining the water.
And sustaining the trees so that you can have hydrated, high turgor, water-filled plants around your house that are releasing water vapor all the time, maintaining a high humidity and keeping the temperature down, really protecting your house from the fire danger and really protecting the vegetation from that high flammability.
Yeah. So then if we're able to receive we're able to retain, then we're able to recharge, right? So recharging through sleep, what is recharging? We already talked about it. This is the cell regeneration, right? This is the detoxification. This is the working through the adenosine. If you've had a stressful day and you get a really deep night's sleep, you are working through the epinephrine or the adrenaline that you had from your stress all day. You're working through cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Your body is able to actually whoosh, work through that. And you are able to recharge through your brain slowing down for a moment, and then your brain rising up for a moment to recharge. And again, the memories and the problem solving and all of that is happening. So the recharging in sleep and just feeling rested.
Yeah.
Sleep is about recharging.
Yeah. Well, and waking up with the answer to a problem, right? Have you ever had that? Like you're thinking about something, maybe it's even keeping you awake, and then finally you fall and you get into your deep sleep and you have good 5 stages. When you wake up in the morning, you got it. I figured it out. I know what to do.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And if you ask yourself a question before you go to bed and you let yourself sleep, you can really. There's been studies. With math problems even. Like it's pretty cool. So but we want to talk recharging of the soil.
Yes. So recharging of the soil again. Yeah, it's like the aquifers. Like now the water can come in, it percolates down, recharges those shallow aquifers, replenishes that soil moisture, replenishes the vitality of the ecosystem, the plants that are really tapped into it, and then eventually recharging those deep, deep aquifers. So keeping our streams flowing, keeping our ponds and our lakes full, and keeping the cycling going between the water and the earth and the plants and the atmosphere, and the rain to the water and the earth to the plants, to the atmosphere, to the rain.
And then the last one is release. And so like we said, you're working through all of the hormones, the adenosine, the toxins, even the caffeine or whatever. You're working through that and you're just releasing that in your sleep, right? And a lot of times the sleep, you're releasing your stress. You're letting your body fully rest. So you're able to release. And I'm just going to say that for that one. But I find that, if you can really get a good night's sleep, that sense of release for me is really strong. I mean, last night with the rain, and I didn't even get to talk about white noise and, but natural sounds like of rain or of the waves we can hear in Santa Cruz, it helps our bodies to entrain, to get into this natural cycle, which causes our heart rate to slow down and our brain waves to slow down. It helps us get into a natural rhythm. So I like to promote that rather than the white noise machine, but a lot of people love the white noise and that could work as well. But try just to have natural sounds around you. Yeah. So, and do you want to say one last thing about release?
Well, release, I pretty much went all the way there with the recharge. Because once it's in the soil, then it can be released in the streams and be released via the bodies of the plants into the atmosphere. So these 4 really epitomize these cycles that we're talking about, that you have to receive, take it in, soak it, release it, receive it, take it in, soak it, release it.
Exactly. So we're just about out of time, but we had wanted to,
we're going to go 5 more minutes.
We're going to go 5 more minutes. So a lot of what we just mentioned, we want to call those, so we talk about Keystone Species, right? And so a lot of these things that we just mentioned, they're like Keystone Practices. So a Keystone Species is a species in an ecosystem where if it's not there, the whole arch of that ecosystem, the arc of the ecosystem falls apart. So think about now, and I actually won't list them all out, but just think about now, after everything we talked about, what are some keystones of sleep? What have you identified through this talk that are keystone actions that are necessary for sleep that you, if you haven't already, can now put into your bedtime, well, I'm going to say ritual, but it could be your bedtime practice or what you do, that your path to bed, your ecotone from wakefulness to stage 1. What can you do there to help yourself get a better night's sleep? So that's the keystone behaviors, and the same with the water. What are some keystone practices? One of them, again, like Lydia said over again, carbon, right? mulch in the soil to allow to allow the water to really infiltrate and get down.
And the earth
And the
works.
earth.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so the shaping and the pumping with the organic matter and plant roots. Those are your keystone practices for water infiltration.
Right. And then we just wanted to mention one of our favorite Keystone species, that it's coming back to California, and we actually have some in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and we have them in Los Gatos, and even in San Jose.
And Martinez.
And
Martinez.
Martinez.
Famous.
Can anyone guess what they are? Little Keystone species. Are so cute. They're actually rodents, but they're the cutest rodents, thank goodness. Or they but if anyone want to type it in the chat, what do you think it is?
Drum roll. Okay, we're gonna tell you.
It's the beaver.
Yay!
So the beaver is a fabulous. So we were talking about this talk, and Lydia's like, "Can we bring in beavers? Like, what's a sleep? What do beavers have to do with sleep?" And we kind of figured that beavers were kind of like the adenosine, right? So beavers get in, and they slow the water down.
They're reshaping the landscape.
They're actually called environmental engineers. So they're creating ponds, they're creating waterways, they're making the water go deeper into the land to hold more water, to be able to rest, to, again, help prevent fires. We'll send you some resources on the beaver.
Just some really fun stuff.
We're having a little love affair with beavers right now.
They slow everything down and give the water that chance to soak in, and then they spread it out, and then they dam it, and they spread it out some more. And the loss of beavers on this continent has been a massive contributor to the dehydration. And most of us had no idea.
Yeah.
Because they were lost so long before the big waves of colonization that we just didn't realize what was already missing from our landscapes. And then our practices just exacerbated these issues.
Yeah. So just thinking about
Carmen, beavers are my new favorite animals.
Yeah, they're so good. So we'll send some resources just around beavers. We're not going to talk a lot about them now, but just think about beavers in the sense of the adenosine and the sleep pressure in a good way. It's called sleep pressure, but it's good. It's that feeling of like, whoa, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
And it's genuine tiredness that you're getting from the adenosine, not just from being exhausted, from being stressed out.
Did you say the sleep keystone practices?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you say go to bed and wake up at the same time?
Oh, I didn't. Okay, here we go. Thank you. This is why we take notes and have an outline. What I wanted to say, so I talked about the lights, I talked about the devices, I talked about the caffeine. And again, what the sleep researchers say, and particularly Matthew Walker, if there's one keystone practice that you can all do to get better sleep, and I know there might be some eye rolls, it's to go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, no matter what. It's just a hard one.
It's a
hard one for me.
Rhythm.
I promote that, and it's really hard for me to do that.
I help her.
She helps me, but yeah, because sometimes you have other things going on, right?
Yeah.
So, but that is the number one thing, the number one keystone practice that we can all do around sleep that will help us and benefit us most around sleep.
Yeah. And even our phones now, right? The new operating systems, they have a little sleep thing. You tell it what time you want to go to sleep, and then it lets you know a half an hour ahead so you can get into your practices. So, okay, our technology is trying to help counter the effects of our technology. I appreciate it. It's not adequate, right? You have to, really take this on for yourself to regenerate your own personal ecosystem, to really value and prioritize sleep the way we can value and prioritize infiltrating water on the landscape for the health of so much more than just the little focus that we're talking about.
Okay, so we're going to end on that.
I don't read the thing.
Okay, well, we have a beautiful quote. I want to get to everybody's questions, but we have a beautiful quote by David Abram about sleep. Just read it, it'll just take a moment. So David Abram says, "We sleep, allowing gravity to hold us, allowing Earth, our larger body, to recalibrate our neurons, composting the keen encounters of our waking hours, the tensions and terrors of our individual days, stirring them back as dreams into the sleeping substance of our muscles. We give ourselves over to the influence of the breathing earth. Sleep is the shadow of the earth as it seeps into our skin and spreads throughout our limbs, dissolving our individual will into the 1,001 cells that compose it. cells, tissues, and organs taking their prime directives now from gravity and the wind, as residual bits of sunlight caught in the long tangle of nerves wander the drifting landscape of our earthborn bodies like deer moving across the forested valleys. So
isn't that gorgeous? It just really brings sleep into a landscape context in this beautiful way.
Which of course we love. So
Yes, thank you. That's just such wonderful information. I've been taking notes and I see some of the behaviors I have that aren't helping my sleep. So actually I'm going to enter into the chat the link for the survey. Please take it. I read all of them and take suggestions, and it helps me to select classes to bring to you all. So please take that. And then also next week on December 15th, we have Elizabeth. She lives in Woodland, I believe, and she took a PDC and she's going to walk through her yard transformation of what she took and learned and walk you through the steps. And one of the things that we got to hear the presentation a little bit early, and she talks about the people care of your neighbors, which I thought was really beautiful, considering your front yard. And, you know, some of her neighbors are all grass lovers. And so how she really included edibles that they could, you know, that looked beautiful. And she, you know, so it's a lovely, I encourage you guys all to join that. And then Lydia and Anne will be back on January 9th with guilds and community. So similar type talk of showing the parallels between those. So that's welcome you to join that. And again, if you're considering taking a PDC, contact us. We'd love to see you at the PDC in Benicia in January. So I think now we can get to the questions. I have some that I've written down from the chat.
Yeah, I'm trying to write some of them also. So we can start with, there was a question about the temperature of the room when you go to sleep. And
let's go to the next one for right now.
Yeah, okay.
I think that there's, yeah.
I find that the bed can be warm if the room is cold, like my face needs to be cold and having that fresh air, but I use a hot water bottle also. Somebody said about a bed heater. But then I need to get it away from me later because otherwise I wake up too sweaty.
Yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of recommendations around specific temperatures, and I don't like to say, oh, have it be this temperature, because it depends on so many different things. The time of year, yeah, your people's own practices, but the idea is that you want your body temperature to fall about 2 degrees. So if it's already really warm, I mean, so just think about, you want to feel a little fresh. That's how I like to say to people, that the room should feel fresh. It shouldn't feel thick,
stuffy,
right? So to me, when a room is too hot, and sometimes I'll get really sleepy when it's really, really hot, like too hot, I can't breathe. I kind of fall asleep, but it's not as restful or as deep as a room that just feels fresh. Yeah. So I actually, I will recommend to people to not necessarily have a space heater or electric blankets. You have an electric blanket that you love. My mom loves electric blankets. Use it to heat up your bed and then take it off. Right? Yeah. So, or because hot water bottles do the same trick, and those you can actually keep in your bed and just toss them on the floor or put them down by your feet.
But the electric blankets also have the, you know, electromagnetic frequency fields and things, which we're not going into, but yeah, ideally keep that away from you while you're sleeping.
Yeah. So I hope that answers.
Yeah. So then there was just a comment on taking tree leaves and putting them over the soil in order to bring the soil back to life. Excellent. Yes. Get that organic matter in contact with the soil with some moisture that brings those organisms in. They start to go up and down and make those openings. They create those pores as they're pulling the organic matter in and digesting it. And that gives that spongy texture. Good job.
Yeah.
Then there's one about the e-reader, and is that the same kind of light?
The e-reader.
Yeah, I'll find it.
What is an e-reader? Is that like the Kindle?
Yeah, is an e-reader a good choice?
So again, it's better. The light is more dim, right? And so reading before bed is great. I will say that if it's between, you know, Netflix, YouTube, being on an iPad, that the e-reader is better. And I will say that there's been research on that actually a good old-fashioned book is really nice before bed. It's not electronic. You don't need to use it. You get sort of the smell of the book. It's tactile. You're turning pages. There's just a different experience with the way that your brain is taking in what it's reading.
Yeah.
So, but I understand all the reasons for using e-readers. I know. Yeah, again, my mom, it's another great, she's like, well, how about if I'm on my Kindle then? And I'm like, okay, well, that's better. Put it all the way down. Because even those little book lights are way better for you than your computers or your devices
or
and
an
your
overhead.
screens, or an overhead.
Yeah. So I know a lot of the e-readers and Kindles, they do have a different wavelength of light, and you just like look it up and check it and see and make sure it's different, you know, not the blue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great question though. Yeah.
But then there was another one about listening to relaxation podcasts before bed, but they're on the computer. But if you're not looking at the computer, if you have the screen faced away or the light all the way turned down of screens asleep, what do you think?
So I'm all for, I'm not opposed to that. I mean, again, this is personal. A lot of my students and our participants, they do that. They use different apps to help themselves fall asleep. And I say as long as they turn off eventually, right? So you don't want to be listening to something and then fall asleep and then it never stops. You do want it to actually stop. And some people are like, yeah, but then I wake up as soon as it stops. Well, but then maybe you use it to relax and then you turn it off and then you try to put yourself to sleep, because you don't, you really want to, again, sleep as a skill and as a practice. You want to be, with most skills that we have, we don't want to give over the control of that over to something else. We want to keep it to ourselves. So if so definitely listening to relaxing music or a guided meditation before you fall asleep is great. And just have it be part of that ecotone. Let it not go into the rest of your sleep. Have it be part of your getting into stage 1 where you're just very ready, and then turn it off. And then allow yourself.
A lot of them have a timer, you know, they turn themselves off. It's a nice aspect of technology.
Yeah. So again, just to make sure, just to have it be part of, not the complete bedtime pathway.
Yeah. So now we have a question about the trendy new heavy blankets. I haven't tried one, but we both really like a heavy, you know, like a few wool blankets and that weight that just makes you feel really grounded. I don't know if you have any research on that.
I do know, I've been getting all kinds of ads on my computer with these new trendy heavy blankets. And the only thing I'll say about the trendy heavy blankets, and I'll say this about any blanket, just my natural fibers. If there's polyester or something unnatural in it, I don't recommend it, just for the breathability, just for the ability to, it's such a different quality. So if they're polyester, I mean, polyesters aren't very bulky, heavy, so I'm not sure what they're made out of. I'm one of the trendy blankets. The trendy blankets. Yeah. I own so many wool blankets, and like this time of year, I have like a little, I got 4 or 5 of them.
It's a mulch layer.
It's over a little mulch layer. It is. It helps me stay asleep. And then as I'm, you know, if I get too hot at night, I can just take them off.
I take all the blankets anyway, so she's fine.
Anyway. So that's what I would say. I mean, it really depends, but I tell all my family and friends and students and participants, just my main thing about blankets is try to really keep them natural. Cotton, wool, just the old faves. Yeah. It's been around a long time.
Okay, last one we see here, thoughts on atmospheric water generators like humidifiers or dehumidifiers in the bedroom. If the air is really dry, and yeah, I mean, a humidifier in the bedroom can be really helpful, especially, you know, if the heat has been on and that's drying out the room, or you're like dry in your mouth, or you're maybe congested and so you have to breathe through your mouth. I don't know about as far as, you know, any effect on the sleep cycles. Do you know? I
don't. Actually, it's a really interesting question. I'm going to write a note to myself. But I think that they would be fine. They don't really make a lot of noise. And it really, again, if it's helping your sleep situation feel balanced and peaceful, right? And it's helping you not, like Lydia was saying, if you're really dry and there's just too much going on, yeah, be comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And really, and again, the other main thing is self-regulation. You want your sleep environment. You want to be able to regulate your sleep environment from your bed. You don't have to get up, turn off the heater. You don't have to get up and turn off the lights. By the time you're in bed, maybe you have your little night light. You know, maybe you do have your hot water bottle. Maybe you do have your trendy little heavy blanket. But you know, because then you can pull it up closer, you can take it off, you can do that all from there. And you really want to be able to self-regulate your body temperature and your heart rate and the overall environment for yourself.
Yeah. So an addendum here, to address local climate challenges at the house level or community level. Yeah, I mean, the machine that's humidifying or dehumidifying, it can't actually create water or take water away. It's just going to sort of moderate in a little micro envelope around it. So yeah, I mean, if you have mold issues in your house, a dehumidifier can be super helpful. And if you have to use the heater a lot and it's really dry, then the humidifier can be really helpful. But as far as its impact on you know, climate, it's really, it's too small of an effect, and it's not actually changing anything. It's just sort of temporarily moving the phase.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, we went off to the sleep thing, which but yeah, definitely use those. People are using them here a lot. In Santa Cruz, a lot of the houses are moldy actually, and really, really damp because they were built as vacation homes like back in the 1800s, you know, and so no insulation. So a lot of people have dehumidifiers, especially.
But if you have a dry climate overall, having more plants in your landscape and having those plants be in contact with saturated soil with a shallow aquifer, that is going to bring that moisture up and the plants release it into the air. So plants themselves create humidity in the air, and if you have too much humidity in the air, then it would really be about increasing airflow. So really just thinking about the wind and the patterns of the planting in order to get more air to move and dry things out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, more on the global level there.
Yeah.
Community level.
Yeah. Let's see, I used diffuser with a couple of drops of lavender oil. Yeah. Carmen, or no, Ana Paula. Yeah, great.
Which reminder? I don't know what reminder.
Which reminder? I lived in Aptos. It was called Fog City.
Yeah.
Yep, Aptos. It's a foggy one.
Yeah.
Just like in Davenport can be quite foggy.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Santa Cruz, we're in a bay, right? So the outer areas can be much, foggier than where we are.
And of course, the whole Bay Area microclimate mysteries are so fun, you know.
Yeah.
If you don't like the climate or you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes or drive over the next ridge and it'll be different.
Yeah. Let's see, reminding us about plants as natural atmospheric water.
That was the reminder.
That's the reminder.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then that's what we, any other questions or comments or thoughts? What do y'all think about anything you might be able to do around sleep, or what are you going to go run out and do in your landscapes, your gardens, if you have them, around water infiltration? What might you do around your bedroom areas?
What's your new excitement that you're taking away with you today?
Anyone have anything? You can unmute yourself if you want to, I think, or can they, Nicole? Actually.
No, I don't. You know
Yeah.
Yeah, really growing plants, you know, like as Lydia did remind, I mean, you really, the plants that we choose to put in our landscapes, in our gardens, they're everything. They can create their own little microclimates. You can have, I feel, you know, my neighbors on either side, they have hardscaping. They have concrete, literally. So concrete driveway and concrete driveway, and they have one big redwood on the one side.
With like huge paved parking, excessively paved parked landscape.
And there, when I've gone over there, it'll be hot and dry, like literally right next door to me. I come into my yard that's a 1/4 acre, and I, planted with I have a little wildlife quarter. I've got a ton of stuff going on.
Minimal
and
pavement.
it'll be almost, misty, foggy in my yard still in the morning when it's already warm and hot and dry.
Yeah.
So really just thinking about, again, what's the environment we want? We want to bring moisture in so that we can feel and actually see the moisture in the air. It'll smell different. It'll smell, I mean, their homes, and I like my neighbors fine, but their homes this morning smell like concrete, right? Our yard smells like
rain.
It smells
Yeah.
like soil. It smells like, ooh, like all the plants. You can smell the lemons. You can smell all of the fragrances so much more in the air through the water.
And so just to let you know too, in our courses, well, the Vital Cycles course that we do here in Santa Cruz, we spend a whole weekend on sleep and water together. And in the condensed,
so this is really abbreviated.
Yeah, this was super condensed. And even in the Sustainable Solano PDC that starts in January, it's more condensed than the Santa Cruz course we do, but we still go into this quite a bit more and really spell out this whole vegetation, soil, and climate stability cycle via water, and go really a lot deeper into the sleep and managing our sleep practices and you know, building that awareness. So if you're curious about more of this, if you want to go deeper, you have an opportunity to join us.
Yeah.
I actually had a question about staying asleep. What are your thoughts on that? Any suggestions? Because I can fall asleep. It's staying asleep.
What are the things that stop you from staying asleep? Do you just wake up?
I just wake up. Yeah, I just wake up and I'm like ready to go at 2 a.m. Like, all right, start the day, you know? And yeah, so I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, so did you want to say something after that? Or?
Well, I know that sometimes if there's a sedative involved in the going to sleep process, that when that sedative wears off, you wake up without having actually been into that deep sleep. So I don't know, I'm assuming that's your problem, Nicole.
Not so much, you know, it's just I don't stay asleep. So it's, you know, anyway, so that's what's
So some of the things that I recommend is, so a lot of people, they wake up. So if they wake up at 2 a.m. and then they immediately, they like wake up, they put on their lights, they start thinking, they start doing. And so one of the things that you can do instead is have like a little tiny light, right? And have maybe a journal there. So if you need to get something off your mind, then you can just put it right down there in the journal. But don't let your suprachiasmatic nuclei get too stimulated, and don't let your brain get too stimulated. And if there's a meditation, so I'll have my students write their own guided meditations and visualizations, and encourage them to use them when they need to fall asleep, right? So the other thing that I learned from Matthew, I was going to say Scott Walker, is that counting sheep doesn't work, right? Because counting sheep uses this whole really activating part of our brain. But if you visualize yourself in a natural setting, it can be your favorite place. Just have that ready to go and walk yourself through. Then you're letting your heart rate drop. Then you're letting your blood pressure drop. And you're already inviting your organ of imagination, we like to call it, to activate, to send you back to sleep. So you want to have, again, so maybe you wake up, it's too hot, it's too cold, so you want to be able to self-regulate that.
Pee.
Maybe you have to pee, but just keep the lights down. Don't turn the lights on, don't do a lot, have your journal right there. Get any worries or concerns that might be keeping you awake, just write them down and promise yourself you'll look at it tomorrow. Now is your time for sleep. So, and then have a few of your favorite beautiful natural places. They can even be in your journal. Not that you read them to yourself, but that you remind yourself, oh, today I'm going to be in Lake Shirenze. And I'm going to remember the Lake Eagles, and I'm going to, and have it ready to go. Yeah.
But also it is interesting research on patterns before we had electric lights, when people really just went to bed when it got dark because the candle was, tedious or whatever. That people would have a whole kind of short night and then wake up. But if you went to bed at 7, right, and you wake up at 2, that was some of the most creative times, and people would write poetry and write music and make love and all that stuff, and then you go back to sleep for another couple of sleep cycles, and then you wake up in the morning. So it may be, Nicole, that you need to journal or write or something, and then say, okay, I woke up at 2, and at 4 I go back to bed.
So use the time, but use it in a way that'll get you back to sleep, right? Because it can be for a lot of people. And there's also research done, and I don't know enough about this, but there's different organs in our bodies that are
Yes.
active, particularly active at a particular time of night. And
Yeah.
sometimes if you're having an issue with that particular organ, you will wake up then. And there's
Right.
a whole science around that. And
Yeah.
we don't have time to go into
You
that.
could get into that
today,
through
but-
Chinese medicine or Ayurveda
Yeah.
or whatever, this kind of
Yeah.
organ cycle, and it might be indicating to you that you have an imbalance in some other system of your body.
Yeah, so that's just a really interesting thought. But then and I know people who have used that, like, oh, I'm waking up all the time, my liver is off, or my kidney, I need to,
Yeah,
you do
yeah.
cleanse, maybe that will help. So again, I don't have a lot of background in that, but I know that we know that it is an area of research and interest. So
Yeah,
it's
I
been
love that. Thank you. Because I love the idea of regulating your sleep cycle from your bed. So having whatever you need right there. So it's not going into another room. And
Away from the computer at that time. It's not like catch up on Game of Thrones, but like,
yeah.
I guess. Anyway.
Excellent. I don't see any other questions. I think we're good to go.
how, where,
Feng shui. It's about
feng
the
shui
feng shui.
comment at the beginning of this year, bed placing, empty under the bed. Yeah.
Yeah, the energy flow.
The energy
Yeah.
flow of your bed. I have people laugh. I have my bed is right in front of my French double doors that looks out onto my garden because I want to be able to fall asleep looking at the stars and the moon, and I want to wake up to the finches that are eating all my little seeds and doing things. So I can lay in bed and be very still dreamy.
Yeah.
And I don't have to move. And it's a really great place to regulate the heat. It stays cool.
Yeah, you just reach in.
And then my little pile of blankets,
Yeah.
oh, it's really good, right? So my nose might be a little cold, but the rest of me is really warm, and that's really great for sleep.
Yeah, and I mean, some people feel very disturbed by moonlight and they wake up and they can't go back to sleep, but we really love the moonlight, and I wake up and I see it and I bask and I go right back to sleep.
Yeah,
but
same.
Also, like if you have a lot of clutter in your bedroom, or there's just like these little pockets of stagnant energy or something, I mean, that can have this very subtle effect that can be really hard to pinpoint if you're not clued into it, but it's actually quite impactful. So
yeah, so it's a good idea. I try to keep my my computer, I don't do so much my phone because now it's my snoozer, but I keep that all out of my bedroom when I go to bed at night. So it's just not even there. It's not even part of the room that I'm in.
Yeah.
So highly recommend that if that's possible for people.
Yeah.
Lots of lifestyle changes to consider.
Really, again, going back to the vital life skills piece, it's really seeing sleep as a skill and as a practice, not just something that happens to you every day.
Yeah.
Right.
And just to throw out some more of those permaculture principles, like we talked about, make the least change for the greatest effect. And that is the epitome of this particular talk. But also just thinking about, what resources are already around you that you can use, like just regulating your sleep cycle from your bed, Nicole, like what you said, like have your journal right there, have your glass of water, make it so you don't have to get up, like think that stuff through, and you don't have to get it all right the first night. You just make it an intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a quick tip for people who like to eat late. This is no, because I've done, sometimes it happens, right? So if you eat late and you have to go to bed right after, it's recommended by several that you lay on your left side because it will help your digestion. You're not supposed to be digesting at night. So this is the other thing, right? You really don't want to be digesting. So it's fine if you do. But when you go to bed, to lay on your left side, it frees up your enteric nervous system, it helps all of the digestion happen simpler. I'm just going to throw that out there because we have a little bit of time. And I think it's really, I know for me, that happened recently. I ate I went to bed really early, actually, is what happened around the time change. I went to bed super early and I had eaten. And I thought, and my stomach, I was laying on my back and my stomach was not happy at all, right? Because then you think everything's sort of laying on itself.
Yeah.
Then I turned onto my left side and it quieted down.
So
Try it out.
Yeah.
Try it. It quieted down. Took like a minute, but all the little like gurgling, weird, like digestive stuff was like, oh, great, cool, thank you. I have space now to move.
Yeah.
So just try that if you need to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okie doke.
Exercising too during the day to like really that helps with the adenosine and all kinds of other like hormones and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are We are complete.
We are complete. We are
Thank you, Anne and Lydia. This was so fabulous. This is wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate you guys so much.
Yeah.
And we'll have a lot more images for our talk in January. There's just not a lot of really nice images about sleep. We're gonna take a class. We want to take a class so we can start creating our own beautiful, wonderful images.
Yeah.
Because sleep is so profound, and really want to be able to share some beautiful I don't know, scientific, more round and flowy images.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
so
all.
much.